Evening and welcome to this week's Ask the Farmer Q&A session. My name is Bridget Barry and I coordinate Farming for Nature. Farming for Nature was set up to encourage and inspire farmers that farm or wish to farm more for nature. One of the ways we do this is we find exemplary farmers each year and we showcase the work that they're doing on their farms. And one of the ways we are able to do this is by doing our fortnightly Q&A with a different farmer each time. So for the tonight's event, I'll be kickstarting the event with asking our guest speaker a couple of questions, and then I encourage any of you who have any questions to write it into your chat box at the banner at the bottom, and I'll facilitate these questions as we go along. Sorry, if you miss any of tonight's session, or if you know of anyone that would be interested in seeing it or hearing it, it will be up on our YouTube channel by tomorrow evening, so feel free to share it after that. So on to tonight's event. We're delighted to welcome one of our more recent Farming for Nature ambassadors, David Dennison from Viking Irish Drinks, sorry, in County Waterford. David runs a vineyard and orchard in County Waterford, and we're delighted to have him here tonight. So thank you, David, for joining us. And sorry, I keep calling you Dennis.
That's okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. So David, you're a new one for us because not only are you running a vineyard, but you're also, you have an orchard and a vineyard running alongside each other. So you are producing drinks, but you've also branching out into ecotourism more recently. So before we get into all of that, you might just start with telling us your own journey into this type of farming.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be on tonight. Yeah, we started this project back in 2008, 2009, and I suppose my background is I'm a sommelier by profession, and viticulture, vinification has always been a kind of a sort of a hot subject from my point of view, and so we started back, as I said, in 2008, 2009, and we started to plant. I wanted to plant a specific type of apple, which was cider apple. So we studied what they do in the West Country in England, and we kind of followed that pattern of just planting, I suppose, 90% kind of West Country cider apples. And alongside that, if that wasn't enough, we said we'd plant some grapes as well. So we have roughly about 1.5 hectares of, 1.1 hectare of vines, and we have about 3.5 hectares of apple trees, which is not a lot, but because we do it organically and everything is sort of hand driven, but we keep growing it year on, year in.
And you produce everything from red wine to white wine, liqueurs, ciders. It seems quite a vast range, but yeah, it's all manageable and works in tandem nearly, or?
It does. Up to 2019, we were buying a lot of apples in, but because we've sort of gone full-fledged organics, we're really only producing what we grow ourselves. And when I look back at what we were buying in, we were only producing maybe 2 or 3 ciders. Now we're producing 8 different ciders, but in smaller batches. And we don't want to be kind of putting big mass quantities into, we do work with a good few supermarkets. And then with the wines, they are very much, they're probably sold before they're even made, and they're hand sold, so they don't really reach the retail. Restaurants and hotels would take a lot of the wines as well. Yeah. So we're producing white wine, we're producing method traditional sparkling wine like a champagne, we're producing a liqueur white wine. Now we probably won't be able to produce that every year. It depends on how good the year is. And then with the red wines, we're producing a red wine, and we're producing a pet nat, which is a sparkling wine which is kind of fermentation takes place in the bottle. But everything is done naturally. No yeast, or we use just the yeast from the natural yeast for both the apples and the grapes.
That's amazing. That's a real range. Just to put it into context for me, am I allowed to ask roughly, I mean, are you producing 5 bottles, 500, 5,000?
Roughly with the ciders, probably about 12, 13,000 bottles. And with the wines between, I suppose, all the different varieties, maybe 2,500, 3,000. It depends on the year. But as we keep planting, like say, for example, we're planting another 1,000 vines this year. So they'll come into production in about 3 years' time. And so that should bring our volume up to about 5,500 bottles.
Okay. So you have a background in it, but is it, were you new to growing it, or had you kind of grown it elsewhere? Or
I have a diploma in viticulture and vinification, and I kind of knew everything until I started to plant, and then I realized I knew nothing, because the experience of actually, I suppose, reading about the fantastic vineyards around the world and producing your own wine and growing your own grapes, they're two totally different subjects. And because Ireland doesn't really have a tradition in winemaking, it kind of goes over a lot of people's heads, and they kind of, I don't think they believe you, first of all, that you can actually do it, but you can do it. It's very, if you pick your site properly and you pick your varieties properly, we are limited at what we can use, from a grape selection point of view. But there's lots of fantastic new varieties coming on stream, and very exciting for us.
Yeah, it's amazing. Did you pick Waterford, or was that because it's one of the warmer? Are you from there, or was it because it's one of the warmer places in Ireland?
No, like
drier. Sorry.
No, I'm not from Waterford. I'm from Kildare, from Ballymore Eustace in Kildare. But I'm living in Waterford since 1979. So we moved to the site that we have here. We built a house in 2001. And, I kind of always said, because of where we were, because we're probably about 6.5 kilometers from the sea, but we're sheltered to a certain extent. We do get the southwesterly winds, and we get plenty of rainfall as well, of course. But we have a really good aspect for growing, not alone just the apples and the grapes, but we grow soft fruits, blackcurrants, blackberries as well. And that's for our blackcurrant liqueur. So it's very suitable for what, but the one thing that I would say is when we moved here, it was very little. So we've built a really kind of a good sustainable, kind of sub varieties like bay leaf, lots of different fruits. We've plenty of hedgerows, which is, we allowed to develop naturally. And so it's kind of created its own terroir over the years. It just didn't happen like that. And of course, we've got bees as well, and we encourage lots of different insects, from particularly bumblebees. So we make little mounds for bumblebees so they can actually hibernate and secure themselves for the winter.
Brilliant. So what would your farming system kind of look like, a season by season, just as an annual overview for us?
Like our season really starts, like people put down the 1st of February is spring, but we put down spring as being the kind of the 2nd week of January. So that's really when our season starts. And, that's mainly like, say, the 1st week of January, we do a lot of racking of the ciders, of the later ciders. The early ciders are done before Christmas. and that side of it, then we look after it. And then at the moment we're pruning apple trees, and everything is sort of hand pruned. We prune very, very hard because we grow fairly tight. And so pruning will continue right up to kind of about 2 weeks. But we're also doing a lot of mulching and natural sort of mulch around. At the moment, we're doing the grape varieties, so they're getting mulched. Not every variety will get mulched every year, probably every second year. But what we use a combination of just natural compost and chaff, which is a coffee leaf from the coffee bean, and so we mix that together. So that would kind of bring us right up to around the first week of March, and then we'd start to prune the grapes, the vines, and tying them up, and kind of tidying up around the vines, and that'll kind of bring us right up to the end of, and then we're going to start planting new varieties. So that'll start the second week of March, and that'll bring us right up to May. And then it just keeps going. There's no stopping.
So it's a relatively new business. I mean, it's going into its 5th year. It sounds like you started in 2018, is it?
Yeah, our first production really was just before COVID, 2019. Even though we produced a lot in 2018, we didn't actually release. And we released in May 2019. And then we got hit with COVID.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, it scuppered a lot of our plans.
And but you're still actually talking about expansion, are you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the demand you find is there.
Oh yeah. Like we want to expand to make things a little bit more easier for ourselves. Like where we manufacture, where we produce the cider and the wines, are converted stables. So the first part of the expansion will be to cover the existing buildings, which will give us an extra probably about 750 square meters of ground, which is quite a lot. But we're also trying to factor in where we have people coming for tours, and at the moment it's a little bit tight. So that will help from the eco-tours point of view.
And we're going to the ecotourism in a second. I might just stay on the kind of the actual kind of wines and stuff at the moment. I mean, obviously, in my ignorance, I feel we have a more varied weather system than, say, France. Or other wine producing countries, how hard is it to get the same product each year? If you know what I mean, like presumably I would expect your wine to taste quite similar. I mean, I know it's the grape and stuff, but it's the guaranteed weather. It might be slightly different. Is that a challenge, or it's not a challenge at all?
It's a challenge, definitely a challenge. Like every year is a challenge, but I think no matter what country you're in, every year is a challenge for a lot of winemakers, whether it's France, like take for example Portugal. Last year in Porto, most of their vines got burnt from just too hot and no rain. Whereas we're the opposite end of the scale, where we've got a lot of rain. The grape varieties we use, they're not necessarily, they're not completely depending on sunshine, but good light. And of course, sunshine is a huge bonus for us. But yes, every year is a challenge. But like take, for example, last year, 2022 will be a very, very good year. And it'll be very similar to 2018. Whereas 2019 was light, for just talking about wines now, was light, and 2020 was decent, but a small crop. And 21 was probably not unsimilar to last year, but again, a smaller crop. And then we've had bumper apple harvests for the last 3 or 4 years. So it definitely does vary. But we're no different to any other country, winemaking country, anywhere, because
everyone has their challenges.
everybody has their challenges.
Yeah, of course. I know
Absolutely.
that you're nearly at the end of your conversion to organics, but you haven't sprayed your land at all in about 20 years. But
Yeah.
you know the kind of the getting you certified organic will probably add value to your product, is it? And
Absolutely. Yeah. But
the challenge related to that then as well,
um,
to you find,
it's,
or
yeah, there is a little bit of a challenge, but you know, I was just talking to somebody in the UK today actually about you know, kind of cover in between, say we're talking about vines, and where we tend to leave a little bit of cover, they're saying that it takes away from, you know, it takes the actual water content away, but we would, but again, you see, it's different because everywhere has their own terroir. So we would be using the terroir to really to benefit what we do. And we think that little bit of ground cover, grass, like the guy I was talking to was talking a lot about weeds. We don't talk about weeds. We think weeds are a very, very good thing because sometimes they're you know, they're misplaced or misrelated. And, you know, like say, for example, thistles, we would never cut a thistle because they produce so much air through their pores, and, you know, they're hollow in the center. So they're allowing a lot of air to get down and water to get down as well. And so, you know, everywhere will have their own kind of concept as regards what way they actually do it.
so say in terms of weeds and stuff, you wouldn't see it at all that it's competing for the nourishment in the soil. You'd see it as that's kind of adding to it.
Well, it would if you allow them to get out of hand. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. But if you keep them under control, certainly they're a benefit. And like say cutting in between vines, you know, everything is left, nothing is taken away. So it's creating their own sort of nitrogen in themselves. And no, I wouldn't see it as a disadvantage. And now of course we do clean in between, say, both the apple trees and the vines. And every year we do it, we just pull back the grass and the soil is there. It's as clean as if it's after being sprayed, but of course it hasn't been sprayed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you dig down, you see all the lovely worms and everything is sort of, the soil is, you can look at it and say, well, that's healthy soil.
Mm-hmm.
If that's possible to say that.
Yeah. Just because you mentioned it a couple of times, like, can you just explain what terroir is for those of us who don't know?
Well, terroir really, it's just the environment that we have around us. Like we're part of the terroir as human beings. The insects, the plants, the flowers, the bees, the birds, they're all part of the terroir. So the more you encourage of those, you know, the insects and the birds, and okay, we have a great part to play in because we're creating yeast as well for our fruit and for our vines. But it's all about creating natural yeast, which that terroir will give you. Plus the fact that, say, in our production we don't use sulfides, but I suppose we're lucky and maybe a little bit unlucky. We, you know, in our production, our acidity, our natural malic acid, is always very, very high. So that will help, so that we don't necessarily have to use sulfides. But
Okay.
not saying that sulfides are bad; they're not bad, but we tend not to use them.
Mm. There's definitely a more of a trend moving away from sulfites, isn't there? Like,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
people have the fear of the hangovers that they cause, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
if we can avoid not to use them, I think you get a much better production,
Mm, yeah.
and you get a much better natural fermentation of our product as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a bit harder trying to work out the jigsaw puzzle.
Little bit.
I noticed that you do bird surveys on your land, and you kind of monitor what insects are there and stuff like that. I mean, birds and insects to maybe other vineyards owners would be considered a nightmare because they're also competing for the luscious goods you're producing. This
Yeah.
isn't a problem for you, or how do you manage that?
It is a problem, yeah. But this year we are investing in netting for our vines, so that will take care of the birds, because we do suffer. We probably lose about, maybe particularly with the red grapes, they don't go near the white grapes. Maybe they can't see them. But the red grapes in October, it's a constant battle. Just but because birds are territorial, you kind of know exactly where they're going to be, and we probably lose about maybe 10-15% of a crop towards the end of the season by not having netting. So yes, that's a challenge. That is a challenge for us. And this year we had we got a warning from Wales that there was migrant starlings coming our way, and they came within sort of 24 hours of that warning, and it was literally thousands of them. So they kind of, but they didn't stay. They left as quick as they came. But it was funny. We had a sparrowhawk actually helped in that, and
okay. So
helped
kind of you have the kind of natural predators
yeah
around
yeah
as well.
yeah, we've a lot. Yeah, we've buzzards, sparrowhawks, hen harriers. It's you know, it's
So what's your biggest fear in terms of kind of the insect, like pest control?
insects. Not really. We don't. The only thing we do suffer with is canker on our apple trees and stuff like that, and we kind of cut it out. But we, like with our, say from a maladies point of view, our grapes, they never really, they haven't really suffered, which is amazing, you know. And
is that down to where they are, or is it down to maybe the kind of the genetics of them were quite strong?
I think it's a genetics, Bridget. Yeah, we would use varieties that are just like, when I started off growing grapes, I had this fantastic idea that we'd plant Pinot Noir and we'd plant Bacchus and Chardonnay and stuff like that. But they've all come out of it. We've had to take them out because they don't work. We're too far north for that type of variety. So we're working with a lot of varieties called peewee varieties, which they're crossed between vinifera and ripara varieties. I don't want to get too technical because I don't want to lose people, but they work. Say like this year we're planting it's a cabernet grape, but it's crossed with a grape that we actually already grow, which is Solaris, which is a peewee variety. And this is really exciting for us to be able to have these new varieties, because up to now we've been relying on two varieties, like Rondo for red and Solaris for white. They were the two grape varieties that really work for us, as well as Orion. That's another white grape variety. And so now we have 7 new varieties that we can put into our blend, which is that's going to be exciting. When they come on stream, they're going to be another few years before they like, we plant everything from bare root, but we find
and commercially, how many wine growers are in Ireland?
Believe it or not, at the moment, I did a sort of look around, because we were doing something for our customs and excise and for the duty, and at the moment there's about 22 vineyards either being planted or have been planted. Now some are micro and some will be slightly bigger than micro, like 3, 4, 5 acres, which is pretty big. And I think there's one vineyard is 8 acres. So they have to come on stream yet.
Okay, fair enough. So, I mean, you're quite a young business, as we said. You're kind of going into your 5th year or 4th year even, but you seem to have a real range, which we've already spoken about. Is this more hard work in the production room, or is it once you're in, it's grand, just a kind of a slight variation? Or
a little bit of both, but diversity really of our product to be able to capture different markets. That's our, like say with our cider, I was doing a hop cider, which was a hop flavor, and you know we were selling quite a bit of it, but it wasn't making an impact on the shelves. It was being left on the shelves in some places. They weren't selling it. So now we've changed it and we're just releasing it 3 times a year, and we're selling 3 times as much of it as we were before. And the same with, I produced a new cider in a champagne bottle called Ragiford, which is the old Waterford name. And that's going to be kind of, we'll target the restaurant, the on-trade and the cafes and the bars with that. And so it's really kind of producing, and it does add to the workload, but it makes more fun for everybody, including ourselves. So we can enjoy it too.
Great, excellent. Before I move on to the ecotourism side of the business, Brian Jacob has just asked her, in Ireland, are you allowed to add sugar to the grape much to bring up the alcohol content during fermentation?
Well, you can, and some years we have to do it. It's called chapitalization, and like say for example, last year we didn't actually have to put 1 ounce of sugar into either the whites or the reds, but in 2021 we did. But we're not governed by the quality, the QWPSR, which is the quality wine produced in a specific region, but we will be at some stage. But our industry is so small that it doesn't really it doesn't warrant that. But the less sugar used, the better. Say with our ciders, we never use sugar, ever, never.
They just naturally.
Yeah.
What's your species of apples? Are they heritage apples or?
We've got some heritage Irish peach and a few others, but it's mainly, say we've 14 different varieties. So they would be anything from Kingston Black to Yarlington Mill, Vicky. We use another apple, which is near the apple, Katie. And, you know, I think we've Browns, Sweet Alfred, Foxwhelp, varieties that you really wouldn't be that commonly known here in Ireland. But we'd use them exactly the same way as you would for blending wines. They all have some are bittersweet, some are bitter sharp, some are sweet. And that's the fun of it, getting a blend that would be, you know, kind of like, we'd love to do single varieties of our cider apples, but we don't have enough to do that. And maybe with Dabnett, which we grow quite a bit, maybe at some stage we'll be able to do it with Dabnett. But like that's yeah, we've about 14. Of course, like we've another apple called Boscop, which is a little bit like Bramley as well. But Bramley is really important for us for our later varieties, because the later varieties are very, very low in acid. So we add the Bramley to it to increase the malic acid, plus crab apples as well.
So, I mean, I should imagine it's busy kind of managing the vineyard and the orchard, and then you produce it all on site. Distribution, do you outsource that, or are you kind of driving around doing that yourself?
No, we do that ourselves for the moment, but we will have to look at distribution at some stage. There's no doubt about that. We have done it already. We've looked, and we're just trying to kind of hit on a sort of a producer or a distributor that will buy into what we do.
Because how important is it for you to meet your customer?
Everything. It's the only thing, because, you know, particularly with certainly with the wines, if you were to give our wines to a distributor, they might never sell. But when we go and taste, that's one thing we do as well. We do a lot of on-the-site training with people, with staff, and explaining what they are. And, you know, because our ciders are not, you wouldn't say they're commercial, but we want people to enjoy them, of course, on their own, drinking, kind of without ice, and but also to be able to enjoy them with food, because that's our we just love matching our ciders with food, and they can be just as good as wines.
Okay.
But you have to get people to buy into that.
So you've moved into wine tastings on site as well. I mean, I know you were just talking about wine training, but you've also moved into wine tasting for the general public. Why did you feel that there was a need for that, or was it just interesting for you for people to come onto your farm and show them the land, or because it doesn't strike me that you have a huge amount of spare time sitting around waiting for someone to turn up?
Well, I suppose when you're busy, you're never too busy. But we how it actually started 2 years ago. I got involved with a travel agency in America, and they wanted to bring some tours to our little vineyard. And I said, they must be mad, coming from America to see an Irish vineyard. So we had 3 or 4 of those tours, and I said, look, they enjoyed it so much that I said we should be doing this really, for our kind of Irish clientele. So we've had people from like last year was our first full year doing it, and we've had people from Northern Ireland, we've had people from Sunderland in the UK, we've had people from Wales, Ireland, everywhere. It's been just, and I like to think nobody left unhappy, because we give them as much time as they want. Plus we give them a nice cheese board, Waterford cheese board as well, and
Great.
a tasting of 3 or 4.
Yeah, so they're getting the total kind of experience of the area and stuff.
Yeah.
So Joe Corey has asked, how do you prevent apple scab?
We don't. Apple scab is not a problem for us at all, because basically all of our apples are pressed or juiced. So the funny thing about it is we don't get a lot of it. We might get the odd speck of it here and there, but it never bothers us, because they're not going onto the supermarket shelves for eating apples. They're basically, like, say, for example, when we pick the apples, we'd let them rest for a while, and we'd press them, leave them for maybe 24 hours, 36 hours. We'd mill them, not press them, mill them. And then we press after maybe 24 or 36 hours. So it's juice. The juice is what we were really interested in. So scab, it doesn't really bother us that much,
Do you produce, sorry, just because you mentioned juice, do you produce non-alcoholic kind of produce?
No, it's funny. We've been researching it for about 2 years, and that's our next, is to do a non-alcoholic cider. We have just been kind of researching how the best way to do it naturally. We possibly will have to pasteurize, but if we have to do it, we have to do it. But we do want to produce a non-alcoholic, because it's a huge part of the drinks industry today.
You can see that from just adverts that are turning up on telly and stuff.
Absolutely.
It's a massive growing area.
Yeah.
And how about apple juices and blackcurrant juices? Just juices, you don't. That's not
we
your
just
area.
wouldn't have. We don't have enough, unfortunately. We'd love to do. We'd love to do apple juice, but to do it on a scale to make it profitable, we'd have to have about 5 times the amount of apples as we have now. We'd love to do it.
Fair enough. Becky Reid has asked, were there many grants available for starting up or maintaining the vineyard and orchard?
Yeah, we were very lucky. We got in with the DEFM, the Department of Agriculture, Fish and Marine, and they've had a grant system since, I think it's 2017. So we have we've got some machinery through them, some stock, and that was sort of at a rate of about 40%. And it's quite difficult to do it yourself, and we do all the paperwork ourselves. and it's quite laborsome to do it, but we've built up a good relationship with them. And now with the organics, there's spectacular grants if you do it properly, and there's grants of maybe 60%, which is incredible, and that covers really for buildings and stock and so on.
So for the actual kind of getting the product out there as well, it's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. They won't give you grants for, say, bottles and things like that, but or labels. But maybe if that person is interested, the local enterprise board are very good too. Mm-hmm. And they will help you with the likes of, like we developed our label, Viking Irish Drinks, and they helped us towards the development of the label, because we felt that the brand was really important to get the brand correct and have it uniform from the wines to the ciders. That does never change. You know, it'll change to a certain point, but we'd always keep that sort of anchor part of the brand intact.
And is there a story behind Viking Irish Drinks, or is it just as a personal?
Oh no, there is a story. Like we're about 3 kilometers from Passage East, and really it's there that the Vikings sailed up the River Suir and the Nore and the Barrow. So like we're basically in a Viking area, not necessarily a settlement, but we would have that history, plus the fact that, you know, the Vikings, they were basically in every town and village on those 3 tributaries, the Barrow, the Nore and the Suir. So we center a lot of our business from, you know, up as far as Athy in County Kildare, where the River Barrow flows through, and they'd have, you'd actually read up and see the towns and the cities where the Vikings settled, and they're really up as far as Antrim. They're all over the country, you know. A little bit misinformed in what they did.
I know. I have to say, there's like a vision of, I don't think any Viking man would say no to a glass of cider, but you know, I'm sure that wasn't the reason. Alejandro Quiando has asked, have you seen any success in growing your own hops?
Yeah, like we thought of it. Like the hop industry in Ireland in the early 1900s was huge, and there's very, very few people doing it. I know Wicklow Wolf up in Wicklow, they grow their own hops, and there's another brewery in Laois. They were actually at the ambassador ceremony. They have a beer, I can't just think of their name.
Is it?
Yes, actually, that's right, Morris DC. Yeah, they grow their own hops, and I don't think we'd venture into it. Like we've got a supplier in France that can supply us with organic hops, and that's what we're looking for now. Wherever we can get organic, we'll buy it. We pay double the amount than what we were, but the quality is superb. But definitely no, we're not going to start growing hops. Now we do grow a lot of nuts. We have walnuts, hazelnuts, and cob nuts, and Spanish chestnut. But definitely hops we'd love to, but no, I think it's fairly specialized as well.
Yeah. And on that, do you obviously you don't have inputs because you're organic, but do you have many kind of imports, or you know, what external things that gets bring onto the farm? You were just mentioning hops there. Well,
hops we import. We get a lot of our vines from Germany and France, mostly Germany. Then a lot of our apple trees were coming from the UK, but not now because of Brexit. It's causing a problem. So our next batch will bring in some rootstock from Holland, and we'll do our own grafting with our existing varieties, because they're actually quite good. What else do we import? A good bit of machinery from, say, Italy, and for the type of work, for the type of production we do, it's very hard to get any of that here in Ireland,
Sorry, you don't handpick then, you pick by machine?
No, it's hand-picked.
There's handpicked.
Yeah, but with the vines, with the first batch, we would get a group, and I must say the students in the local college in the SETU, it's now a university, so we'd get a group of them would come maybe 3 days in a row, and they'd pick, maybe 6 of them would pick, and 3 or 4 of them would sort the grapes by hand, and it's great for them because they're learning, because it's part of their course as well.
You don't have them in big pots jumping up and down on them, do you?
Oh, we do, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
they
absolutely,
do that.
yeah. They love that.
Okay.
But last year we had Irish students, of course, but we had Japanese for the first time ever as well. We had 6 Japanese students, which was great.
Interesting. Liam Denny has asked, without giving away your secrets, what would you suggest to a novice with a ratio for blending dabinets and cookers?
That's a great question.
Quite specific.
Yeah, it depends, but I think I'd nearly be looking at 50-50. Maybe a little bit more in the Bramley, because dabnets are really, really low in acid. Like when we do a pH test, like the pH is so high that you would kind of panic because you're into kind of bacterial sort of ground, dangerous ground. So really to get anything, like we'd use Bramleys, and we have about 30 or 40 crabapple trees. So as much as possible. So I think with our we did about 1,000 litres of late harvest apples, and I think probably about 40-50% of Bramleys and crabapples went into it to get the pH down and get the acid up.
So can you know this beforehand, or is it something that you only kind of find out on the day, sort of thing?
Normally we'd say about a week before we pick, we'd maybe pick at random different apples, and we'd press, we'd get juice at them, and we'd do a pH test and do an acid test, and we'd have a very good idea then. But sometimes between the time you do that test and the time you pick, the acid could have dropped even further. It depends on how warm it is, and if they're dropped on the ground, definitely the pectins will certainly get lower, and the acids will get lower as well. So it's but it's never a mystery to us. We kind of know, even by tasting the apple, we know exactly where we are with it. That's one of the disadvantages of cider apples. They do lack a lot in acid, so we have to like with the last question, it's good because we're always juggling with kind of have as much Bramleys as possible because you can get acid up to about 11.5-12 grams per liter, whereas with the dabnets you could be talking maybe about 2.2 grams per liter, which is, it's not enough.
Yeah.
But that's the joy of it. And I'm not giving away any secrets because it's just common sense stuff.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Siobhan Lavelle has asked, who did you say gave the grant for covering 60% of the buildings?
Well, that will be coming on stream this year with the organics. Some of it will be 60% and some of it will be 40%.
So you have to wait until you're obviously an organic.
No, we're qualified for that.
Yeah. But sorry, if someone's asking, it's not until they're an organic farmer that they
have
can
to be
actually.
in it. Do their courses, and then apply to one of the bodies, one of the organic bodies. We're in the Organic Trust, and like say with our netting for our birds, some of that will be covered with the grants.
Okay, here's a question. I'm not too sure, Sean Kelly, it might make sense to you. Could you grow grapes on the apple trees?
No. It's funny, like we have a lot of interplanting. We have apple trees, and in between we've got some grapes. But they look for different nutrients. People say, well, would it not be taking the nutrients away from each other? But they actually look for totally different like vines will go a lot deeper than apple sort of roots. The apple roots will be kind of very much across the top of the ground, and whereas the vine will go deeper but longer. When we were uprooting some of the Pinot Noir, we followed a root system which was probably about 20 meters.
Wow.
So they spread out quite a bit, down and across, down and across.
Wow.
Well, not necessarily down. No, 20 meters down, we couldn't get down there.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, you can't. No, I know what he's coming from. I know what Sean is kind of saying, that just kind of.
Could you use it as a structure?
No, definitely not. You could do on an apple tree, you could probably grow about 6-7 different varieties of apples, but not anything else.
Okay. Joe Murray's asked, is flat ground preferred to hillside for orchard vine growing?
A good slope is really beneficial from a drainage point of view. And we work kind of north-south for the growing of vines on a slope. It can be done on the flat if there's good drainage, but I would definitely, for anybody thinking of doing it, get a soil test, go to Chagas or some of those and get a soil test. And, of course, don't just test one place, go to about 6 different spots. But growing on the flat is okay if you've got good drainage. In other words, that the soil is light, which in Ireland, the soil tends to be quite heavy, no matter where, unless you're very close to the sea. And that's another situation where I've done consultancy work for people that are thinking of growing vines beside the sea. And I'd be very worried about it because of the salt in the air. You get great drainage, there's no doubt about that. But a flat, if you have a slope, much the better. And a good south-facing slope as well.
Okay, good. Brian Jacobs asked, when do your tours start?
1st of March.
Okay.
And
they go on until
the 16th of December.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're.
Yeah, so they're on our website, I think, at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So you're open for business now on the website. You can book a tour. Is there kind of a minimum amount of people or a maximum or?
Maximum 10. And generally speaking, it's 4 or 6 people we get. But like if 2 people book and there's another 4 people, they all join up and have a great time.
Great, excellent. And it's 2 or 3 hours. It's an afternoon, is it? Or?
We say 2 hours, but to be quite honest with you, I don't think we've had anybody out of the place for 3 hours. I think it's been always close to 3 hours, because there's always plenty of questions. Like we had one group in October from the north, and they actually helped to pick the grapes, and they absolutely adored it. Like, they didn't get paid for it, but they really enjoyed that experience because they had never done it before.
Yeah, the crack of being involved.
Yeah, and it was just interesting.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Sean Kelly said, do grapes need insect pollination?
No, that's a great question, because the funny thing about grapes don't need pollination at all.
Okay.
No, but they're self-pollinating, which is, but in saying that, we see a lot of bees and bumblebees actually hitting on the grapes, on the leaves at certain times of the year, which means that they must be getting something from it, because they wouldn't be there, but they're self-pollinating.
Interesting.
And we do suffer with frost, by the way. We have frost problems as well in May.
Okay. Which is probably a bonus of being close to the sea for those who are a bit closer. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Less of it. Alejandro Criando has asked, do you have on-site accommodation for woofing?
No, we looked at woofing, and we'd love to do it, but at the moment we don't, but we are looking at that, okay.
Siobhan Lavelle has asked, I've heard it's good for the wine to continue fermenting in the bottle. Why is this? And is sediment not a problem?
That's a great question, because like last year we did some red wine petnat, which is the fermentation continues in the bottle. And yes, there's plenty of sediment, but we're going to remove that sediment when we, like it's been lying down on its leaves since I think about the 14th of December. And now when I say the leaves, that's just the sediment. That's basically the sediment, and they're just lying flat. And we'll leave it like that until probably October of this year. And then we'll remove the sediment, which is called degorgement.
So is it in a big cask? It's not bottled, or the
Oh, no, it's in the bottle. It's in a champagne bottle. Yeah.
Oh, so you can take the sediment out.
Yeah.
You can open it again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And but for, say, our red wine, we've got about 500 liters of red wine. They're in tanks, and they will be racked basically any day now, and left in the tank. And we won't bottle them until probably maybe October, maybe November, or maybe not. Maybe it could be the following year. It depends really on what sort of sediment they're throwing, because they will throw a sediment. But for the red wines, if we were to bottle the red wines now, you'd end up with a sparkling wine, and we don't want that. We want it stable, and the red wine will undergo what's called a malolactic fermentation, which is changing the citric acid into a softer acid. So that's, again, it's reducing down the acid, which we love to see that happening. It's a slow fermentation, but I don't want to get too technical. But one thing we do, Bridget, we're actually doing we're doing a NOTS course on the 14th and 15th of March. I might have forgotten.
Your training, is it?
Yeah, we've got a 2-day course with the National Organic Training Skill Nets. Okay.
So if anyone's interested in looking it up, it's nots.ie, and you can book through them, presumably.
Yeah.
And what's the course called?
It's an introduction to viticulture and vinification in a marginal climate.
Great. That's really interesting. And is it online, or is it?
No, it's on site.
It's on site on your farm.
Yeah. Sean and the guys, they'll bring down the mobile training caravan or mobile home or whatever it is. But we had one last year, and it was so successful we had to run another 2 days. So we had 4 days on the trot.
Brilliant.
And I think people enjoyed it, and they really, kind of. I think it really will stem their enthusiasm to grow vines.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Tracy McCarthy has asked, do you find it difficult to grow walnuts?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think last year we got maybe a few dozen. But the one thing, I think we've planted too densely, and they should have had more light, because I've been to one farm where they have a lot of older chestnuts or walnuts, and they get big crops. So you can get a big crop.
You just need to give them the space.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean Kelly's asked, could vineyards around the world apply agroforestry? What do you think about this?
Could they apply agroforestry?
Yeah, I suppose, could they have different animals grazing throughout, or? Yeah,
well, last year we got some sheep in to just get the grass down a little bit, and they didn't do any damage. But well, we would love to see the introduction of kind of animals that are extinct in Ireland, but mixing with agroforestry with what we do, I think we're contributing to, certainly with the vines. They produce a lot of good air, good oxygen, and they're very sustainable. They're not taking the oxygen, they're giving anything that they're producing, which is really good. So we're really, really happy with that, as well as our reed bed system where we have all our kind of wastewater is filtered down to a reed bed system, and that's
Okay.
contributing to the environment as well and the sustainability.
Yeah, because you have 3 big ponds as well on your site,
We,
don't you?
we've four
Four, yeah.
ponds in total,
Yeah.
3 with a lot of reeds in it, and then 1 which is slightly overgrown at the moment. And we'll have to get at it and remove some of the plants from it because it was never meant to have reeds in it. But
Mm.
the amount of wildlife that we have is just incredible. It's amazing what it's actually, you know, from something that was never there, and what we've brought into the environment is, you know, anything from, you know, from bird species to insects. It's lovely to see it, particularly this time of the year, because we're in full spring at the moment. For the moment, anyway, we are.
Yeah. So when you bought the land 14, 15 years ago, it was a greenfield intensive land site, or?
Yeah, it was being used as a conventional farm.
Yeah.
And a lot of sheep were on the land, which was good. Not a lot of cattle, I think, but a lot of sheep.
Good in what sense? It is less trampled, is it? Or
less trampled, yeah. And but one of my neighbours, he's dead now, but he was telling me that the land was never actually ploughed, which was amazing.
So the seed bed was kind of rich, obviously.
Yeah.
So Joe Murray has asked, how far north in Ireland would you consider an orchard? Is Galway too far?
It's not, because if you look at, say, Armagh is the home of the Bramleys, and they've got a special designation for their apple up there, which is protected. The Bramley have a special, like, say, in Waterford, we've got the Blah, which is a crusty bread. Armagh have a designation for their apple, for the Bramley apple. So I think you can grow apples anywhere in this country, bar places that are too sea swept, wind swept.
They actually don't, because we interviewed someone else who had an orchard, and like they don't need a lot of soil or good soil. In fact, they kind of prefer, in many cases, not good soil and stuff. So I was kind of surprised like that. Joe Corey has asked, where can I source barefoot nuts?
Barefoot nuts.
Don't worry if you don't know the answer.
In Ireland, you get them in English. English is not nursery in Wexford.
Okay. He's also asked, did you make the ponds yourself, and how?
Yeah, we did. Well, I didn't make. I got a big kind of a cat, on tracks to dig out the ponds, and they were done to a specification by, I suppose, one of the great experts of reed beds in the country, and we followed that plan. But I actually planted them myself. I went in big waders and planted them myself, so everything was hand planted. It was. I don't know whether I do it today, but it was tough work.
Okay. Pavel has asked, David, what varieties of walnut do you recommend for planting?
Well, we've got I think black walnut is the one that we have. So that's the only one that I wouldn't be an expert on walnuts, but the black walnut is the one that is prolific in Ireland.
Okay. Just because we're coming to the end of our hour, David, is there anywhere in particular an individual can go for support and advice in terms of orchards and vineyards and growing in that kind of sector?
For orchards, Teagasc would be probably the best from, say, the orchard point of view. Kildalton and Kilkenny, they've quite established orchards, and they give really good horticultural advice from that point of view. For vineyards, I don't know, Saul Goodman. I don't know.
There's not a huge amount out there.
No.
The Irish Seed Savers up in County Clare also would have a lot of courses and stuff.
Heritage trees, a lot
of kind of courses around orchards and stuff, if anyone's interested in that. And then the other question I have for you is, where would you, if you were to advise a another farmer who's looking to set up a drinks business on their site, what are the kind of main things to consider?
Really, I suppose looking to get it registered with HSE and kind of local authorities. They're the first two things, really. Having good water supply, whether it be your well or whether it be sort of from a water system. And they're definitely the three things that I would look at.
And what would the biggest challenges for you and on your journey in establishing a drinks business?
I suppose because we run a farm and we run manufacturing. So, like, say for example, the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Marine, they're our inspector for the land, but then the HSE are our inspector for the production. So they kind of have you can't go any further than that. Yeah. And I suppose I suppose the challenges really are what one individual wants to do. You know, what their market. They have to have a market plan. They have to have a business plan as regards to, you know, how much they need to produce to make money out of it. And making money is not easy, as it would be with most businesses. But certainly have a good market plan as regards to where it's all right. It's all very fine producing the stuff, but if you don't have a market to sell it to, then that's a problem. I'm lucky because I have a background in you know, kind of wine, because I was importing wine for nearly 15 years. So I kind of understand the market. That to me is the biggest problem, because not everybody is orientated to dealing with the customer. They can talk to the apple trees and they can talk to the grapes, but talking to people are two totally different things. So I would definitely think that is really really important.
Consider, yeah. Fair enough. Listen, David, thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's lovely to hear such a varied business and such a success story after such a short time, and also not to the detriment of nature, which is really important, obviously, for us. Very
important, yeah.
Very important.
And thanks to all the people that tuned in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone missed any of tonight's session or would like to share it with anyone else, it would be on our YouTube channel by tomorrow afternoon. Our next Q&A session is in Tuesday, 2 weeks' time, with another drinks person, Maurice Deasy, who David actually mentioned earlier, who is a North Tipperary, and he is growing heritage grains for brewing. And so if you're interested in that, please join us. You can register through our Farming for Nature website. We'll probably hopefully have a farm walk tour on David's land, maybe in the summertime. So keep an eye on our website, and I'm sure you can find David through his website, Viking Irish Drinks, and all the kind of associated social media platforms. David, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing what the next stages are for your business. Well done.
Thank you very much, Bridget.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.